نسيم أمل بسام ونرسم حضارة ومدن.
Welcome to your weekly program, BelAhdan, the show that brings the other side of Arab America into your living room. For the two people out there that have not heard about the Somali youth that went to Somalia and blew himself up, we're talking about Shirawa Ahmed. This is the one who was mentioned, and talking about, according to the FBI, there are a couple of dozen, they said, they've been missing. We don't know where they went and how this is. That's why the FBI been alerted. And the Congress, under the leadership of Joe Lieberman, now he's declaring a crusade against what's also called the Islamic terrorism in this country. We've been talking about this for a couple of weeks, but we thought we'd give somebody who knows something about this issue, about the Somali condition, Muslims' conditions, and we'll discuss the complexity of this issue, about the condition that under which those acts is taking place. And we have here Professor Ahmed Samatar. He's professor and dean at Macalester College here in the Twin City. Welcome to BelAhdan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
You know, as a Muslim, and I'm looking at these things, and I'm a little bit alert too. I mean, it seems that we don't know the details of this, but all we know, there is somebody who left and is missing, and all of a sudden we found him blown up there in Somalia. So how should we look at this incident and the complexity of it? This is a Somali issue, a youth issue, an Islamic issue, or an American issue. Or, some kids go and blow themselves at high schools. We don't know. Right. So what's your take on so far?
Yeah, I think it's a complex phenomena, not to be overly alarmed, but worrisome, complex phenomena. And from my point of view, I think you have to kind of do an archaeology of the problem. That's to say, take slice by slice. Generally speaking, I think the conditions that face young men and women of Islamic faith from different nationalities around the world, one can suggest, and I think the evidence is rather strong, that they face a present and a future that is almost grim. Grim in what sense? Employment, education, a sense of self-validation and feeling a sense that you are living in a world with a degree of efficacy. So when you have people, young people, and across the Islamic world, the vast population now is increasingly under the age of 30. Whether it is in Bangladesh or Afghanistan or Pakistan or Indonesia or Philippines or Egypt or Somalia or Nigeria or wherever it is. Very young population. And the circumstances in which they live are such that they are extremely alienating. There is no viable economic order for them on jobs. Some of them now cannot even get married because they don't have any resources to do so. So at the age of 30, they are living still with their parents, maybe even older. No economic future. The politics is extraordinarily repressive, almost across the Islamic zone. So there is no political space for them to feel capacity and therefore opportunities to change their circumstances, political circumstances, democratic culture. And then finally, I think there is a great deal of alienation from the power of the Western world, in which most these young people see is at least minimally co-responsible for the conditions in which they live, whether it's in Somalia or whether it is in Afghanistan or Pakistan or other parts of the world.
But this guy lived in the United States. It's a country of immigrants. Yes. A lot of people going through the same conditions.
Yes.
So what's so specific about the Somali youth and the type of act? I think a lot of Americans will be very... I mean, when they hear suicide, they think, at the mega mall.
Yeah, well, I mean, suicide from my point of view, and particularly when you do suicidal things to also destroy the lives of other people. It's not just individual committing suicide. Individuals committing suicide to end their own life takes place in the Western world. It takes here in the United States.
It's the highest
it takes
for
in Europe.
Use.
Yeah, it takes place. But the problem, I think, is much more serious when suicidal acts become acts of destroying the life of other people. And I think for the Somali young people who are here, my argument would be perhaps, as I said before, a kind of a dual alienation. One is perhaps the difficulty of trying to fit here. Most of the Somalis who come, either as immigrants, but particularly refugees, are, not all of them, but many of them, maybe even the vast majority, really are people who are undereducated, who flee here because the circumstances back home are impossible to live. They did not come here because of their own choice. They want to come to the States and find a living life and become part of the society.
It's a push
Most of them
immigrants.
are, yeah, exactly. They come as a result of the impossibility of the circumstances back home. The difficulty then is not being prepared for how to then engage the American society, become part of the society educationally, culturally, and melt into the great American population as a citizen. That is very difficult, but that requires a great deal of work and great deal of self-remaking, which is never easy, but particularly for people who are not educationally and culturally prepared for this. And then the second one is the continuous bite of the agony back in Somali societies. We know now, and perhaps it is a story everybody knows at least the initial detail. A society, the Somali society, which really the most failed society, not just a failed state, the most failed state and society in the 20th century.
Because when you have a failed society, what's what you got left?
Well, that's the problem. So the question of regeneration of Somali society becomes the most paramount preoccupation for almost everybody. But the equipment of how to think through that failure, double failure, at the level of the state and national institutions and at the level of collective culture, how to think through that and then try to figure out ways of overcoming them both at the personal level and at the collective level is the greatest challenge and full of frustration.
The people who left all this condition that you talked about,
Yes.
I thought they were avoiding violence and avoiding war, not going back
Well,
to
well,
it.
well,
So
some-
that's what people were asking. Why would you go back to that condition?
That's right. Some go back because they want to live back home. They can't make it here for one reason or another, or they don't want to make it here. So they go back home, and that's legitimate. Some go back from what the evidence we are getting now, and I think that's still a very, very few numbers. So it's important not to generalize to the whole Somali youth. They go back because they are called in to participate in a kind of a resurrectionist project in which you can give your life to it. And
It's worth giving a life.
That's
I mean,
right.
if you
And
want
this
to build
deep
your country.
sense of militancy, in which one is given the sense that if you pursue this line of salvation, giving your life, therefore, is nothing more than, in fact, going to heaven for a good cause. To me, that's a very short-sighted, narrow-minded, dogmatic, and in the final analysis, a dead end.
Well,
But that is part of the...
Maybe 200,000 Somali in the Twin Cities. Maybe very optimistic. From
no,
100
that's too much. I think in the state of Minnesota has the largest number of Somali people in the United States.
the number goes from
And I think
80,000 to 2,000.
No, I don't